I was sitting in a sterile, white-walled consultation room at St. Jude's Memorial, clutching a manila folder so tightly my knuckles were turning white. Dr. Aris looked at me with a pity so profound I felt like I was already dead. He cleared his throat and said, "Mark, we ran the compatibility panels for your brother-in-law's transplant, but the cross-match results for your own children, they aren't what we expected." My heart didn't just skip a beat. It felt like it stopped entirely, leaving a cold, hollow void in my chest. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why that single folder ended my marriage and changed the very DNA of my life, I need to take you back to where it all started. From the outside, Sarah and I were the golden couple of our suburban neighborhood in Oak Creek. We'd been married for 12 years, the kind of marriage people toasted to at anniversaries. We had the two-story colonial with the wraparound porch, a golden retriever named Buster, and two beautiful children, Leo, who was 10, and Mia, who was 7. I was a structural engineer, a man who lived by blueprints and solid foundations. I thought my home was the sturdiest thing I had ever built. Every Friday night was our ritual, thin crust pizza from Tony's, and a movie in the den. Sarah would lean her head on my shoulder, smelling like the vanilla lotion she always wore, and I'd feel like the luckiest man alive. I called her Sarah, and she called me Bear. It was cheesy, it was domestic, and I thought it was bulletproof. But looking back, there was a crack in the foundation I chose to ignore. About 3 years ago, Sarah started taking these girls' trips with her old college friends. She'd come back distant, her phone always face down on the nightstand. I told myself it was just her needing space. That was my first mistake. But what came next was so much worse. The nightmare truly began 6 months ago when Sarah's younger brother, David, was diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease. It hit him hard and fast. Within weeks, he was on dialysis, his skin turning a sickly shade of gray. David was like a brother to me. He was the one who helped me landscape our backyard, the one who taught Leo how to throw a spiral. When the doctor said he needed a kidney, I didn't even hesitate. I told the family at Sunday dinner that I'd get tested to be a living donor. Sarah's reaction was odd. She didn't hug me or tell me I was a hero. Instead, she dropped her fork, the metal clattering loudly against her china plate. "You don't have to do that, Mark," she said, her voice thin. "It's a huge surgery. We should wait for a deceased donor." I laughed it off, thinking she was just worried about my health. "Sarah, he's family. If I can save him, I'm going to." I thought her hesitation was love. It wasn't. It was fear. I went in for the preliminary blood work and the HLA typing, the tests they use to see if your markers match the recipient's. Because the hospital wanted a full genetic profile for the donor database, and because I'd mentioned that both my kids had some minor autoimmune issues, Dr. Aris suggested we run a more comprehensive panel. He said it would be good to have on file in case the kids ever needed a donor in the future. I agreed, thinking I was being a proactive father. A week later, I got the call. "Mark, can you come in? We need to discuss the results in person." If it had just been about David, he would have told me over the phone. When I sat down in his office, I saw 2 folders, one for David, one for me. Dr. Aris didn't lead with the kidney. He led with the kids. "Mark," he started, his voice low, "when we compared your genetic markers to the data we have on file for Leo and Mia from their previous blood work here, there's a significant discrepancy." My brain felt like it was stuttering. Discrepancy? Like a mutation?
"No," he said, sliding a sheet of paper across the desk. "Based on the alleles present in your children, it is biologically impossible for you to be their father. Both of them." The room tilted. I remember the smell of the doctor's peppermint tea and the way the clock on the wall seemed to tick louder with every passing second. "Both?" I whispered. "Both," he confirmed. If that was all I found, maybe I could have convinced myself there was a mistake in the lab. But a man like me, a man of blueprints, doesn't just stop at one piece of evidence. I left that office in a trance. I didn't go home. I went to a private DNA testing center across town and paid for an expedited peace of mind test using hair samples I'd taken from the kids' brushes weeks ago for their autoimmune tracking. While I waited 48 hours for those results, I became a ghost in my own house. I watched Sarah laugh as she tucked Mia into bed. I watched her pour a glass of wine and tell me about her day. I felt a cold rage bubbling under my skin, but I kept my face a mask of stone. I started digging. I went into the cloud account we shared, but she rarely used. I checked the deleted folders. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a one-time mistake. I found photos, not from a girls' trip, but from a cabin in the Poconos. Sarah was there, looking younger, happier, wrapped in the arms of a man I recognized instantly, Evan, her high school sweetheart. The dates on the photos lined up with the month Leo was conceived, and then again 3 years later, right around the time of Mia's conception. She hadn't just cheated, she had maintained a parallel life for over a decade. She had used me to build the perfect foundation, while he provided the blueprints for the children I called mine. I knew exactly what I was going to do, but I had to be patient. I had to make sure the evidence was so overwhelming that she couldn't gaslight her way out of it. I spent the next 3 days acting completely normal. I even told her David's doctors were still reviewing the donor files. She seemed relieved, thinking she had dodged a bullet. She had no idea I was planning to pull the trigger. I invited David and his wife, along with Sarah's parents, over for a transplant update dinner on a Tuesday night. I chose the Copper Grill, a high-end steakhouse, where the lighting was bright and the service was impeccable. I wanted witnesses. I wanted a setting where she couldn't scream without making a scene. We were halfway through the appetizers when David looked at me, his eyes sunken and tired. "So, Mark, any news from the hospital? Am I getting your kidney or am I staying on the list?" The table went quiet. Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. "It's okay if you're not a match, Mark. We all know you tried." I pulled my hand away slowly, as if her touch burned. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out 4 large white envelopes. I handed one to David, one to Sarah's father, and I kept 2 for Sarah. "I have the results right here," I said, my voice eerily calm. "But it turns out, David, I can't give you a kidney. Not because I'm not a match for you. Actually, I'm a near-perfect match for you. But the hospital found a major genetic complication during the screening." Sarah's face went from pale to translucent. "Mark, what are you doing? This isn't the place." "Open the envelopes, David," I said, ignoring her. As David pulled out the HLA report, I slid the second envelope to Sarah. It contained the private DNA results and the printed photos of her and Evan in the Poconos. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched in slow motion as Sarah's father put on his reading glasses. I watched David's brow furrow in confusion. But mostly, I watched Sarah.
The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her hands gripped the edge of the mahogany table so hard her knuckles popped. She looked at the photo of her and Evan, the one where she was holding a positive pregnancy test and smiling at him, and her eyes began to dart toward the exit. "Who is this, Sarah?" her father asked, his voice trembling as he looked at the photos. "It's Evan," I answered for her, "the man who actually fathered Leo and Mia, the man she's been seeing every time she went on those trips. You see, David, I wanted to save your life. I really did. But the doctor told me something interesting. He said that while I'm a match for you, I'm not a match for my children, because they aren't mine." David looked from the papers to his sister, his expression shifting from confusion to pure, unadulterated horror. "Sarah, what is this? Tell me he's lying." Sarah finally found her voice, but it was a pathetic, broken thing. "Mark, please. It's not what it looks like. We can talk about this at home." "There is no home anymore, Sarah," I said, leaning in. I could see the sweat beading on her upper lip. I could smell the metallic scent of her fear. "I've already had your bags packed. They're sitting in the garage. Buster is at my mother's. And as for the kids, well, that's going to be a very long conversation with a very expensive lawyer." She tried to reach for my arm, her eyes welling with tears. "Mark, you love them. You're their father in every way that matters." "I did love them," I said, and that was the only time my voice cracked. "And I still do. That's the sickest part of what you did. You didn't just betray me. You turned my love for my children into a weapon you could use against me for 12 years. You let me build a life on a lie." I stood up, adjusted my blazer, and looked at David. "I'm sorry, David. I can't be your donor. Not because I don't want to save you,
but because I can't have any part of this family's DNA in my life for 1 second longer. I'm sure Evan has 2 healthy kidneys. Maybe you should ask him. I walked out of that restaurant without looking back. The air outside was cold and crisp, and for the first time in 6 months, I could actually breathe. The divorce was scorched earth. Sarah tried to fight for alimony, but the morality clause in our prenup, something her own father had insisted on, stripped her of almost everything. She moved into a cramped apartment across town, and from what I hear, Evan didn't want the instant family he'd helped create. He vanished the moment the lawyers got involved. As for the kids, that was the hardest part. I'm still in their lives. I'm the only father they've ever known, and I couldn't punish them for their mother's sins. But every time I look at Leo's smile or the shape of Mia's eyes, I see a stranger. I see the man who helped Sarah destroy my world. I'm living in a small condo by the water now. It's quiet. There are no Friday night pizzas, no vanilla-scented lotion, and no blueprints for a perfect life. But the foundation I'm standing on now, it's made of the truth, and that's the only thing that's ever been worth building on.